Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Scholar. Tonight we drift into the timeless world of music, a realm of invisible waves that shape our emotions, memories, and even the rhythm of our hearts. Music is older than civilization, yet as fresh as the latest song. It is something that we feel before we understand it, something that ties us to our ancestors and binds us to strangers across the world. Whether it is the soft hum of a lullaby or the roaring swell of an orchestra, music has the power to move us in ways no other force in nature can. In this quiet journey, we will explore the mysteries behind this universal language. You will discover how music touches the body, the brain, and the world around us in ways that seem impossible yet beautifully true. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. For now, just breathe. Allow your mind to soften and let nature's rhythm guide you to sleep. Let's begin. The oldest musical instrument we know is over 40,000 years old. Carved from the hollow bone of a great bird and pierced with carefully spaced holes, that ancient flute carries the breath of a vanished world. Its makers shaped the sound by intuition, testing distances along the tube until melodies spoke. The artifact shows wear along the finger rests, proof of long use by skilled hands. When researchers recreate its dimensions, they reveal a scale that feels strangely familiar, as if the human ear had already begun to favor certain intervals. This relic predates metalwork and written history, yet it captures an urge that outlasts stone and fire. Imagine the night beyond the cave mouth, a small circle of embers and a line of notes carrying across the dark. In that moment, a community becomes more than survival. Rhythm binds footsteps, pitch lifts voices. A song carves a memory into air, then returns the next night and the next until it becomes tradition. Music may have evolved before language. Long before sentences braided thoughts into stories, bodies could sway, hum, and pulse in time. Infants show a natural grip on rhythm, moving with surprising accuracy even before they command words. Groups that move together tend to trust one another more, a hint that coordinated sound once stitched early communities into something resilient. Mothers instinctively modify their voices to soothe using wide intervals, slow tempo, and gentle contours that calm breath and heart rate. These are signals any baby can understand. Some researchers argue that singing was a bridge between calls and conversation, a flexible tool for bonding, warning, and celebration. The brain seems prepared for this. Areas that plan movement ignite when hearing a beat, as if communication first rode on shared motion. In that light, speech looks like a specialization that came later, a focused branch of a wider musical tree that had already rooted deep in our nervous system. The brain processes music in over a dozen different regions. A simple melody lights up a network, not a single switch. Auditory areas decode pitch and timbre. Motor regions prepare tiny pulses as if the body is itching to tap along. The cerebellum tracks timing with exquisite precision. Emotional circuits weigh surprise and resolution, flooding experience with feeling. Memory systems knit a new contour to old associations. Attention systems decide which instrument to follow in a crowded mix. Prediction centers silently forecast the next note, then reward the mind when the guess lands close. Language regions wake when lyrics join, but they also help recognize structure even without words. The insula monitors the inner body for chills and shivers. Reward pathways signal pleasure when patterns click into place. This layered choreography explains why a song can make you move, think, and feel in one sweep. It is not a single message, it is a whole conversation across the nervous system. Your heartbeat can sync to the rhythm of a song. Listen to a steady pulse and your body quietly negotiates with it. Autonomic signals that govern heart rate begin to sway toward the external tempo. Breathing adjusts, blood vessels respond, and the tiny variations between beats settle into a new pattern. This is not a trick reserved for metronomes. Lullabies slow the pulse. Marches nudge it forward. Even without conscious effort, the body calibrates to regularity and sound. Performers use this to shape a room, easing a crowd into calm with spacious phrasing or lifting energy with driving rhythm. Clinicians harness the effect to support rehabilitation, guiding steps in gait training and helping the heart recover a steadier rhythm after stress. The mechanism is simple yet profound. The body seeks alignment with predictable waves. When the waves are musical, we call the alignment groove. When the alignment deepens, we feel carried as if something outside is kindly keeping time for us. People around the world agree on what music sounds happy or sad. Cultures build distinct scales and instruments, yet listeners from distant places still tend to share expectations about mood and sound. Quick tempos, rising contours, and bright timbres usually register as cheerful. Slow pacing, falling shapes, and darker tone color often feel sorrowful. Even those with limited exposure to foreign styles reliably sort unfamiliar melodies into broad emotional categories. Children show this sensitivity early before cultural training can fully sculpt taste. Evolution may have set a common stage where certain acoustic features map to movement and voice. Lively sounds mirror energetic bodies and uplifted faces. Heavier sounds echo slumped posture and quiet speech. That shared groundwork explains why cinema scores work across language barriers and why street musicians can stir smiles on unfamiliar corners. Specific emotions are always personal, but the broad signals of joy and grief seem to ride on patterns that human nervous systems recognize with remarkable consistency. Babies respond to music before they are even born. In the last weeks before birth, tiny ears are already sampling the world through the warm filter of fluid and bone. Rhythms penetrate the womb. Familiar patterns can nudge small heartbeats and movements. After arrival, a melody heard often during those final weeks can settle a restless moment as if a gentle handshake were offered from a remembered place. Caregivers naturally lean into slow, exaggerated phrases with wide intervals and soft consonants that cut through the muffled environment safely. This early exposure does not teach harmony or meter. It sketches comfort maps that link sound to safety. Those maps then guide early attention, shaping which contours feel welcoming and which feel strange. The effect is humble but powerful. Before a child masters words, a pathway for musical meaning has already formed. The first concert is not a stage and lights. It is a heartbeat, a voice, and the swaying ocean of the womb. Some people can see colors when they hear music. Chromesthesia, a form of synesthesia, paints sound with light inside the mind. A violin may cast a ribbon of pale blue. Brass might flare in gold and crimson. The visions arrive automatically and remain surprisingly stable across years, like a private palette attached to particular timbres, pitches, or keys. This is not a metaphor for vivid imagination. Tests show consistent color choices from one session to the next. Brain imaging hints at crosstalk between areas that process sound and those that handle vision, creating a bridge where one sense triggers another. For artists, this cross-wiring can become a creative tool, guiding composition towards certain textures because the inner picture feels right. For listeners, it can make an ordinary song feel like stained glass in motion. Although rare, the phenomenon reveals something larger. The senses are not sealed boxes, they share corridors, and sometimes the doors swing open. There is a rare condition that makes people physically unable to enjoy music. Musical anhedonia leaves rhythm and pitch intact, but dims pleasure to a whisper. Those who live with it can recognize melodies, detect wrong notes, and follow changes in tempo. Yet the expected rush never arrives. Other rewards remain intact. A delicious meal still delights. A victory in a game still satisfies. The difference appears to lie in how auditory processing links to the brain circuits that deliver reward. Connectivity between sound analysis and pleasure networks seems reduced. So patterns that thrill most listeners feel emotionally flat. This is not lack of taste or effort, it is a neurological pathway that never quite closes the loop. Understanding this condition helps explain the wide spectrum of musical response across people. It also reassures those who feel puzzled by the excitement around songs that leave them unmoved. The map of musical joy is not identical from person to person. For a few, the route is missing turns. Music can help you recall memories you thought were lost forever. A familiar melody can unlock scenes from decades past, complete with scents, textures, and conversations. The effect is strongest when the song is tied to a vivid period of life, often late adolescence, when identity and experience fuse with unusual intensity. Unlike photographs, which cue visual snapshots, sound carries timing and movement, reviving the feel of how a moment unfolded. In clinical settings, carefully chosen playlists can help people with memory disorders reconnect with names and places that daily prompts cannot reach. The music does not repair damaged tissue. It accesses alternate routes through networks that are still available, allowing personal facts to ride along the reopened path. Families often notice posture and expression change within moments, as if a window has been raised in a quiet room. The lesson is tender. Music does not only decorate time, it preserves it like amber that still glows when warmed in the hand. Birds create their own regional song dialects. From forest to coastline, the same species can sing different versions of a tune shaped by local tradition and environment. Young males learn by listening during a sensitive period, copying nearby adults with careful practice until their phrases match the neighborhood standard. Over seasons, tiny deviations spread within a territory, creating accents that experienced listeners can identify by region. Urban settings introduce new pressures. Low rumbles from traffic encourage shifts toward higher frequencies, so the calls remain audible above the noise floor. Forest canopies with dense leaves favor slower, purer notes that carry cleanly through clutter. Open fields allow faster trills that travel without distortion. These variations are not random. They reflect a balance between cultural transmission and acoustic physics. The result is a living map written in air. Follow the songs and you can trace borders invisible to the eye. Lines defined not by stone markers, but by tradition and wind. Some whales sing epic songs that can last for hours. Deep beneath the ocean surface, male humpback whales produce long, haunting songs that drift across hundreds of miles of seawater. These songs are not simple calls. They consist of repeating units that build into phrases, then themes, and finally full compositions that can last for hours without a pause. What makes this phenomenon even more astonishing is that all the whales in a given ocean region tend to sing the same basic song during a given season, even though they are separated by vast distances. New variations appear gradually, evolving like verses in a poem passed along through unseen waves. Over time, older versions fade while newer melodies take their place. Researchers believe the songs play a role in courtship, but the full purpose remains a mystery. When a whale sings, the entire ocean becomes its stage, its voice traveling through the liquid world in ways our ears can barely imagine. There is a fungus that grows differently when exposed to music. A strange and almost poetic link exists between sound and the hidden world of fungi. Experiments with certain species of mushrooms show that when exposed to continuous musical vibrations, the speed and shape of their growth can change. Low rhythmic tones tend to encourage longer and more fibrous mycelium networks, while higher, more variable notes may boost cap formation or alter directionality. This effect does not rely on the fungus having ears or a nervous system. Instead, it appears that vibrations themselves subtly affect the structure of the cells, possibly by influencing the movement of water or nutrients inside. The result is a living pattern shaped by invisible pressure waves, as if the organism were dancing to something it can only feel. This connection gives rise to unexpected possibilities, including music-based cultivation techniques or new insights into how life responds to rhythm on a cellular level. Plants may grow faster when they are exposed to certain types of music. Long before modern science confirmed it, gardeners had whispered that music could help plants flourish. Recent studies lend cautious support to the idea that specific sound frequencies may enhance growth rates in some species. Soft, rhythmic tones appear to stimulate the opening and closing of stomata, which are tiny pores that regulate gas exchange. This improved circulation can in turn promote nutrient absorption and cell division. The effect is usually modest, but it becomes more noticeable over long periods or in carefully controlled environments. Not all music works the same. High intensity or chaotic noise can stress a plant and slow its development. The best outcomes seem tied to gentle, even vibrations within ranges that mimic the natural hum of wind or water. This insight reminds us that living systems are sensitive not only to light and chemicals, but also to waves that surround us all the time. Music can reduce physical pain without any medication. Pain is not just a signal from injured tissue. It is an experience shaped by the brain, influenced by attention, emotion, and context. Music takes advantage of this complexity by capturing focus, triggering pleasure pathways, and altering the perception of discomfort. Hospitals now use carefully curated playlists during procedures or recovery to help patients relax and feel less pain. The analgesic effect appears strongest when the listener chooses the music, suggesting that familiarity and personal meaning add layers of comfort. Rhythmic patterns may also help regulate breathing and heart rate, reducing tension in the body. Unlike medicine, music carries no chemical side effects, and its impact can linger after the final note has faded. The mechanism is still being explored, but the outcome is clear. Sound can soothe not just the mind, but the body as well. Ancient shamans used drumming to change states of consciousness. Across many early cultures, rhythmic drumming served as a gateway to altered states of awareness. Shamans would strike animal skin stretched over a hollow frame in steady patterns that matched natural bodily rhythms such as resting heart rate or breathing cycles. As the beat continued, brain waves are believed to have shifted towards slower frequencies associated with trance and deep meditation. In this receptive state, the practitioner might report vivid imagery, heightened intuition, or connection with ancestral spirits. The drum was not entertainment. It was a vessel that carried the mind across a threshold between ordinary reality and something deeper. These techniques predate organized religion by millennia, yet variations still survive in ceremonial settings around the world. The power of rhythm to focus attention and shape inner experience remains one of the most enduring links between sound and human consciousness. The earliest written music comes from ancient Mesopotamia. On a clay tablet discovered in what is now modern Iraq, markings in cuneiform script record the oldest known piece of written music. The text, dating back more than 3,000 years, describes a hymn with specific intervals and tuning instructions for a type of lyre. Unlike modern notation, it combines poetic lyrics with performance cues, blending language and melody into a single tradition. Scholars spent decades decoding the tablet, comparing the symbols to linguistic and mathematical systems of the time. When reconstructed, the melody is haunting and simple, built on a scale that feels both foreign and familiar. It offers a glimpse into the musical life of a culture that gave us the first cities and the earliest legal codes. In those ancient lines, we see how music was already treated as an art worth preserving. The first known music notation was invented by monks. During the early Middle Ages, Christian monks sought a way to standardize sacred chants across distant monasteries. Oral tradition alone could not guarantee accuracy, especially as communities grew and travel increased. They began marking neumes, small shapes above lines of text that showed the rise and fall of melody. At first, these symbols lacked precise pitch and rhythm, but they captured the contour of the chant. Over time, horizontal lines were added to anchor the pitch, creating the beginnings of the staff system we know today. This breakthrough allowed complex pieces to be shared, studied, and performed by people who had never heard them before. It also paved the way for polyphony, harmony, and eventually the entire architecture of Western classical music. A quiet effort to keep prayers consistent became a foundation for musical literacy. Musical scales are not the same in every culture. While many listeners are familiar with the 12-tone equal-tempered scale used in Western music, other cultures divide the octave into different numbers of steps or even use flexible pitches that shift within a performance. Traditional Indian ragas employ microtones that fall between the notes on a piano. Indonesian gamelan music features tuning systems that create shimmering intervals unfamiliar to untrained ears. African vocal traditions often use sliding tones that move with speech patterns, blurring the line between melody and language. These differences are not errors or deviations, they reflect unique aesthetic values, emotional priorities, and physical designs of instruments. The human ear can adapt quickly, learning to find meaning and beauty in unfamiliar arrangements. Exploring these scales reveals how vast the musical imagination can be when freed from a single standard. The human voice can mimic instruments with extraordinary precision. In a skill known as overtone singing or vocal imitation, trained performers can produce tones that resemble flutes, strings, or even percussive instruments using only their mouths and throats. By adjusting the shape of the vocal tract, controlling airflow, and manipulating resonance, a singer can emphasize specific harmonics that define an instrument's timbre. Some cultures, such as the Tuvan throat singers of Central Asia, use this technique to create two or more notes at once, forming a natural duet within a single body. Beatboxers expand the palette further, combining rhythm, bass, and melody to simulate an entire ensemble. The phenomenon shows how deeply flexible the human voice is and how our auditory perception can be led to hear tools where there are none. The boundary between voice and instrument becomes wonderfully thin. The saxophone was once banned by the Vatican. During the early 20th century, the saxophone became a symbol of modern nightlife associated with jazz clubs, dance halls, and cultural change. Its expressive slides and bold tone made it a favorite of young musicians, but a target of conservative institutions. In 1949, the Vatican issued a statement discouraging the use of saxophones in sacred music, citing concerns that its sound carried secular and even sinful associations. While not a full legal ban, the decree influenced church policy and shaped public opinion in many Catholic regions. Over time, attitudes softened, and the saxophone found its way into numerous liturgical compositions and performances. The episode highlights how instruments can become cultural symbols beyond their acoustic properties, reflecting broader debates about tradition, morality, and change. Some classical composers wrote music meant to be heard only once. In a departure from the idea of timeless masterpieces, certain composers in the 20th century embraced ephemerality, creating works designed for a single performance. These pieces often used unconventional materials such as melting ice instruments, paper scores meant to burn, or instructions to destroy the recording after the concert. The goal was to focus attention on the present moment, treating sound as an event rather than a product. listeners experienced something that would never exist again in the same form, creating a bond between performer and audience rooted in uniqueness. This approach challenged the notion that art must be preserved to have value. Instead, it suggested that fleeting beauty could be just as meaningful, reminding us that music lives in time, not just on the page. The deepest sound ever created by humans is nearly impossible to hear. Scientists working with specialized equipment have generated infrasonic waves with frequencies far below the range of human hearing. These sounds move through air and earth like slow tides with wavelengths so long that they can pass through obstacles unhindered. Such signals are used to study the atmosphere, monitor volcanic activity, and even communicate across long distances without visible technology. Standing near the source, a person might feel a gentle pressure or vague unease, but no audible tone. The body senses the vibration in bones and organs rather than the ears. This kind of sound reveals how limited our usual listening range is and how much acoustic energy exists below the threshold of perception. The world hums with low frequencies that shape weather, geology, and migration. Even when our senses stay silent, there are songs that can cause anxiety even in healthy listeners. Certain compositions use dissonant intervals, irregular rhythms, and unpredictable dynamics to create tension in the mind and body. Horror films often exploit this by pairing disturbing visuals with music that never quite resolves, leaving the audience on edge. Laboratory studies show that even without images, these sonic elements can raise heart rate, trigger stress hormones, and produce a sense of looming threat. The reaction is not a flaw in the listener, it is a survival mechanism. The brain interprets chaotic or sharp sounds as possible signs of danger, preparing the body for action. Composers who understand this can manipulate emotional states with remarkable precision. A sequence of unstable chords may feel like a storm cloud that refuses to move, making every passing second heavier than the last. Some music was composed specifically to be played in empty fields. In the mid-20th century, a small group of experimental composers began writing works intended for open landscapes rather than concert halls. These pieces relied on natural acoustics, wind, distance, and even wildlife to complete the sound. Performers might stand far apart, calling themes across a valley, or let the echo of a single horn wander through a forest. Audience members were encouraged to walk, listen from different angles, or simply lie on the ground and absorb the blend of human and environmental tones. The music shifted with weather, time of day, and location, making every rendition unrepeatable. This approach blurred the line between composition and soundscape, inviting the world itself to become part of the orchestra. The shortest possible piece of music contains only one note. Created as a conceptual statement, a composition consisting of a single sustained tone encourages listeners to redefine what counts as music. When there is no melody, no rhythm, and no development, attention shifts to texture, duration, environment, and personal response. In a quiet room, one held note can reveal subtle vibrations in the walls, variations in breath, and the changing focus of the mind. Performers treating the piece seriously often explore dynamics, attack, and decay, showing that even a single event in time has depth. The work stands as a reminder that music is not just a sequence of notes, but an experience shaped by intention, context, and listening. There is a musical piece designed to last for 600 years. An organ performance in a church in Germany is slowly unfolding, one note at a time, following a composition by John Cage titled As Slow as Possible. The piece began in 2001 and is scheduled to conclude in the 27th century, long after every current participant is gone. The instrument was built specifically for the project, with mechanisms to hold tones for months or years until the next scheduled change. Visitors can witness a moment that may feel static yet sits within a vast arc of time. The work challenges human concepts of duration, asking listeners to expand their sense of patience and continuity. It is not meant to be heard from start to finish by any single person. Instead, it serves as a living bridge across generations, a sound that outlives its creators. You can make music with stars, turning their light into sound. Astronomers use a method called sonification to convert data from distant stars into audible tones. By measuring fluctuations in brightness or radiation, then assigning those values to pitch and rhythm, they create music that reflects the physical behavior of celestial bodies. A rapidly pulsing star might become a high arpeggio, while a slow, variable star emits a deep, steady pulse. The resulting sound is not random. It carries information that can help scientists detect patterns or anomalies more easily than through visual graphs alone. For listeners, the effect is uncanny. It is as if the universe was singing in a language translated for human ears. These compositions remind us that music and science are not separate domains. They are both ways of finding order and beauty in the vast unknown. Archaeologists once found an ancient drum made from human skin. In a Tibetan monastery, researchers uncovered a ritual drum crafted from the preserved skin of a deceased monk believed to have volunteered his body for sacred use. The instrument, known as a kangling, was intended to summon spirits or focus meditation by confronting the impermanence of life. Its tone was said to carry a unique resonance both physically and symbolically, linking the realms of the living and the dead. Such practices were rare and governed by strict spiritual rules. The discovery offers insight into how deeply some cultures intertwined music with mortality, viewing sound as a bridge across spiritual boundaries. Although unsettling to modern sensibilities, the drum stands as an artifact of belief, art, and devotion woven into one object. Music therapy can help people who have lost the ability to speak. When stroke or injury damages language centers in the brain, the ability to form sentences may vanish, but singing can sometimes survive. This difference allows therapists to use melody and rhythm as scaffolding to rebuild verbal skills. Patients learn to intone phrases on a simple tune, gradually replacing some words with spoken ones as pathways reconnect. The rhythm provides timing cues, while the melody engages broader neural networks than speech alone. Over months, this method, known as melodic intonation therapy, can restore functional communication where traditional training fails. It works because music recruits both hemispheres of the brain, bypassing damaged regions and forming new roots. For many families, the first hesitant word after long silence feels like a song in itself. There is a song that has been playing on repeat in space for decades. The tiny spacecraft launched in 1977 carries a golden record filled with sounds of Earth, including music from different cultures and eras. As Voyager drifts beyond the edge of the solar system, this playlist continues its silent journey through interstellar space, waiting for any listener that might someday intercept it. The record includes greetings in many languages, natural sounds, and a curated selection of melodies chosen to represent human creativity. It spins without audience or applause, a lone ambassador of terrestrial art traveling farther than any person will ever go. The gesture is both scientific and poetic, suggesting that music is not just for us, but for anyone who might share the universe. Some instruments are built to create sounds that are physically impossible for humans to sing. Inventors love to chase tones the throat can never reach, so they design devices that twist air and vibration into otherworldly colors. The glass harmonica stacks bowls along a spindle, and when touched with wet fingers releases pure rings that seem to hover in midair. The theremin sings without touch at all, using the proximity of hands to bend pitch into gliding sighs wider than any human slide. Pipe organs drive columns of air through pipes longer than houses, producing notes so low they rumble inside bones rather than on the eardrum. At the opposite extreme, tiny whistles and high overtone flutes rise beyond comfortable human limits. These machines are not attempts to imitate voices. They extend hearing into territories where biology rarely goes. Composers who write for them discover harmonics that float like light and subsonics that feel like weather, expanding the map of what counts as possible in sound. The first electric guitar was inspired by a bourbon bottle. Early experimenters knew that microphones could amplify voices, so they wondered if strings could be made loud the same way. One tinkerer noticed the bright resonance when striking the lip of a glass bottle and began chasing that concentrated ring. By mounting metal pickups under steel strings and fixing those strings to a solid slab that resisted sympathetic vibration, he captured a focused tone that did not fade into feedback. The electrical signal could then be driven through an amplifier and a speaker until a single pluck filled a hall. Suddenly, sustain became a sculptural element. Players could bend notes into long arcs, stack harmonics, and coax growl or shimmer with a flick of the wrist. The leap from hollow bodies to solid bodies turned the guitar into a canvas for touch, electricity, and imagination. A casual clink on a bottle became a clue that led to a revolution in timbre. There are performances where silence is the main musical material. A quiet stage, a waiting audience, and no deliberate sound. What happens is not emptiness, but a transformation of listening. Coughs become percussion. Air vents draw a pale drone. Footsteps in a corridor sketch a rhythm that the room shares through invisible walls. The performers frame this experience by setting a duration and a context, inviting listeners to treat the ordinary as intentional. In that frame, the mind sharpens. The ear roams the space, discovering details usually dismissed as noise. Silence here is not absence. It is an instrument that plays the world back to itself. The lesson travels beyond the concert hall. When we stop crowding moments with notes, we can hear how architecture breathes, how crowds sway, and how time stretches. The piece ends, yet the habit of attention lingers, turning each day into a field recording waiting to be noticed. A type of mushroom can play its own melody through electricity. Fungi communicate with tiny pulses along networks of hyphae, and those pulses can be translated into shifting voltages at the surface. Place electrodes gently against a living fruiting body, and the meter begins to flicker with rhythms that rise and fall as the organism exchanges resources and responds to moisture and light. Map those voltages to pitches and durations, then feed them to a synthesizer, and a mushroom voices a lilting pattern that reflects its internal state. This is not human melody, yet it carries structure and motif. When humidity changes, the pattern shifts. When light dims, the tempo drifts. Artists and biologists collaborate to respect the organism while listening in, revealing how life writes with electricity at a cellular level. The result is less a performance and more a duet with a silent partner that speaks in slow sparks and patient repetitions. Some cultures use music to tell time instead of clocks. Before standardized hours, communities marked the flow of days through sound. Temple bells measured prayer cycles. Work songs set the pace for harvesting with verses timed to a row of grain or a length of rope. In coastal villages, horn calls tracked tides, signaling the safe window for boats to launch. In equatorial regions where daylight stays consistent, melodies changed by season rather than by minute, encoding calendars into tune. Even today, some herding cultures sing routes that unfold across landscapes, each phrase matching a landmark and a distance, so that a remembered melody keeps travelers on schedule without a watch. Music in this role is a social chronometer. It coordinates bodies across space, protecting fairness in labor and tying communities to the rhythms of soil and sky. Time becomes something you can hum, something that feels like belonging. Your brain predicts music seconds before you hear it. Listening is partly guessing. As a melody unfolds, neural circuits model the next likely step, shaping expectations for contour, harmony, and rhythm. When the guess is close, reward systems release a small glow of pleasure. When the guess is wrong in a clever way, surprise sparks curiosity and attention. This dance between forecast and result is constant, from lullabies to complex symphonies. Imaging studies show motor regions pulsing slightly ahead of the beat, as if the body were preparing to tap before the sound arrives. Composers use this bias to set traps and delights, setting up patterns that seem inevitable, then pivoting at the last safe moment. The effect feels like the floor shifting underfoot, yet never giving way. In ordinary life, the same machinery helps us parse speech, read intention, and move together. Music is the gym where prediction trains with joy. The same song can make you feel completely different depending on the key. Transposing a melody changes more than pitch. It bends the emotional color by shifting where the tune sits in the voice and how it interacts with instruments. Lower keys invite warmth and gravity, encouraging slower phrasing and thicker textures. Higher keys introduce brightness and lift, drawing attention to sparkle and air. Harmonic context matters as well. A chorus that resolves to a triad in one key may graze a richer extension in another, tilting the mood from contentment to yearning. Cultural memory adds another layer. Certain keys are tied to signature pieces that linger in the ear, and echoes of those associations can tint new songs. Singers know this intimately. A key that fits the sweet spot of their range unlocks nuance they cannot access elsewhere. The notes are the same on paper, yet the scene they paint shifts with a single twist of the tuning peg. Certain drumming patterns can change your breathing rate instantly. Breath is rhythm. Present a steady beat near resting heart pace, and many listeners unconsciously align their inhalations and exhalations to match. Thickening the pattern into groups of 2 or 3 can guide the diaphragm into deeper cycles that calm the nervous system. Emergency responders use measured counts to slow hyperventilation. Therapists employ gentle hand drums to support relaxation exercises in anxiety treatment. Athletes warm up with sharper subdivisions that prime quick oxygen exchange without forcing effort. The effect does not require belief. It rides on shared circuitry between hearing, movement planning, and autonomic control. When the skin senses vibration, when the ear locks to a pulse, the chest follows. Across cultures, communal drumming often begins with breath-paced rhythms, not only to unify a group, but to prepare bodies for whatever comes next, whether ceremony, work, or dance. Some ancient civilizations treated music as a form of mathematics. In early Mediterranean schools, students learned ratios by listening. A string shortened by half sounds, an octave higher. 2 to 3 yields a perfect fifth, 3 to 4 a perfect fourth. These relationships became models for harmony in architecture, politics, and astronomy. Philosophers drew parallels between consonant intervals and civic balance, arguing that well-tuned governance resembles well-tuned chords. In other regions, scholars mapped complex cycles of rhythm using number towers that predicted when beats from different patterns would meet again. These methods trained attention and memory, but they also taught a habit of thinking where beauty and proof walk together. The legacy persists in modern signal processing and acoustics, where equations still describe resonance, spectrum, and interference. Long before algebra took the stage, a plucked string whispered that the world could be counted by ear. The piano has more moving parts than a car engine. Lift the lid and watch the ballet inside. Each key triggers a lever called a whippen, which lifts a hammer which strikes a string or a set of strings with a felt-coated head. A check catches the hammer on recoil so it can repeat rapidly. Dampers lift away just before impact, then settle to silence the sound at release. Pedals shift actions across the entire machine, changing color and sustain with a foot press. Multiply this by 88 keys, and you have thousands of precisely regulated components that must respond to feather touch and thunderous force alike. Climate influences every felt, pin, and piece of wood. Technicians spend hours regulating action so that the tiniest motion at the fingertip becomes predictable tone. The result is an instrument that houses both percussion and singing sustain, an orchestra packed into a wooden body that breathes and ages like a living thing. There are songs that can only be sung in zero gravity. On Earth, breath fights weight. The diaphragm lifts against viscera pulled downward, and posture shapes resonance through grounded bones. In orbit, the body floats. Fluids redistribute toward the head. Rib cages expand differently, and tiny muscles must relearn balance without a flaw. Singers who have tried vocal exercises in microgravity report altered sensation of support and unexpected ease in long phrases once technique adapts. Instruments also behave strangely. Air columns in flutes and reeds respond to temperature and convection in new ways, and loose parts do not settle the same way between notes. Some composers have imagined works that require free-floating choirs with singers drifting while releasing tones that ride on gentle pushes from fingertips. The choreography becomes part of the score. Without gravity, the body becomes a slow-moving sound sculpture, and the voice discovers spaces that never quite open on the ground. One composer wrote music using only black keys. A piano's black keys form a pentatonic scale that avoids the half-step tensions of the white key diatonic set. Writing exclusively within that framework yields melodies that feel open, buoyant, and instantly singable with fewer dissonant collisions. Composers who limit themselves this way often discover surprising richness in spacing, rhythm, and contour. Harmony must be implied through voicing rather than dense chords, so lines weave gracefully and leave breath between phrases. Folk traditions around the world use pentatonic shapes for lullabies, work songs, and celebrations because the intervals sit comfortably within many natural vocal ranges. On a modern keyboard, the black keys invite glissandos that glide like water and clusters that shimmer without grit. Constraint becomes catalyst. By narrowing options, the ear leans into subtleties of articulation and timing that might otherwise be hidden. You can hear music inside your head that has never existed. The mind is a capable composer, able to synthesize novel tunes by recombining fragments of contour, rhythm, and timbre stored across memory. Earworms illustrate the process when a loop repeats without permission, but the same machinery can invent. Many creators report hearing full arrangements during quiet walks or just before sleep, then rushing to capture them before they fade. Imaging studies suggest that auditory cortex can fire in patterns similar to real listening even when no external sound is present, while motor planning regions sketch the imagined act of playing. With practice, people can refine this inner audition, checking harmonies and counterpoint mentally before a single instrument is touched. The discovery is empowering. You do not need a piano to start a song. You need attention, patience, and a way to catch the moment when imagination speaks. Some people can only sing in their sleep. Titled Somniloquy, researchers have documented cases where individuals who struggle to sing awake produce steady pitch and fluid phrasing during certain stages of sleep. The phenomenon appears when motor pathways decouple from conscious control, allowing learned patterns to emerge without the interference of performance anxiety or self-monitoring. Family members often notice the first episodes, soft songs woven into midnight breaths. Recordings reveal structure and even memory for lyrics. Upon waking, the singer may recall nothing or only fragments. Therapy sometimes uses this window to build confidence, proving that the body already holds the capacity for musical coordination. The challenge then becomes translating night skill into daylight practice through relaxation training and gradual exposure. It is a gentle reminder that ability can hide behind tension and that rest sometimes reveals talent that effort alone cannot surface. A rare brain condition makes spoken words sound like singing. In a few documented cases, changes in neural processing blur the boundary between speech and melody so thoroughly that everyday conversation arrives as if set to a tune. Pitch contours that most people treat as prosody become foreground, while semantic content slips slightly backward. The listener describes a world that feels scored, with voices rising and falling in patterned arcs that demand attention. The condition can be disorienting at first, complicating tasks that rely on rapid comprehension. Over time, some individuals learn to filter the musical layer, regaining focus on meaning while still sensing a subtle lilt beneath talk. The experience offers a clue to how the brain normally separates language and music while letting them communicate. When the partitions shift, we glimpse the shared architecture that makes both possible. There are animals that dance perfectly to music without any training. A handful of species show spontaneous synchronization to a beat, a skill once thought unique to humans. Certain parrots and cockatoos will bob heads and tap feet in time with recorded songs, even adjusting when the tempo changes. Sea lions have demonstrated flipper claps that keep pace with a metronome despite not being vocal mimics. The trait seems to correlate with the ability to learn complex sounds, which suggests that wiring for auditory motor coupling may be a prerequisite for dancing on cue. In the wild, such precision could help with courtship displays or group cohesion. In homes and laboratories, it becomes a joyous surprise, an animal meeting human rhythm on common ground. Watching a creature move so accurately to music reframes the beat as a bridge across species. Deep-sea fish make rhythmic sounds to communicate. Far below sunlight, where pressure crushes careless designs, many fish still hold conversations. They drum with muscles that vibrate their swim bladders, producing pulses that cut through the dark water. Some species coordinate nightly choruses near reefs, their combined clicking and booming forming patterns that fishermen can time like tides. Others use short bursts during mating to signal readiness or to stake out territory. Because low frequencies travel far in dense water, a small effort can carry across impressive distances. Hydrophones dropped into these habitats discover gatherings that the eye would miss. The soundscapes shift with season and moon, turning the abyss into a clock and a calendar for those who know how to listen. Music in this setting is survival wrapped in rhythm. You can encode secret messages into music using frequencies. Steganography hides information in plain sight by tucking data within a host signal. In audio, this can mean modulating barely audible frequencies or subtle timing variations that a human ear ignores, but that a decoder can read. A melody might carry a second layer of meaning that rides under the threshold of perception, like ink visible only under a certain light. During times of censorship, artists have embedded hints or signatures this way to protect identity or to smuggle ideas across borders. Modern digital techniques go further, distributing bits across spectral bins so that compression does not strip them away. The trick is to balance concealment with fidelity, preserving the feel of the music while ensuring the message survives. It is a craft that combines acoustic psychology and code. Humans have built instruments taller than buildings. Consider the stalagpipe organ installed in a cavern where rubber-tipped mallets strike ancient formations across a space larger than a cathedral. The performer at a console awakens pillars of stone, each tuned by careful shaving so that the entire cave becomes a resonator. Outside, engineers have raised wind harps the height of towers, strings stretched along frames that sing when gusts pass, their chords shaped by weather rather than hands. Even larger are architectural instruments that use bridges or grain silos as drums during festivals, inviting citizens to feel vibrations through their feet. These giants blur art and environment. They require patience to build and humility to play because the player must collaborate with gravity, wind, and stone. The payoff is transcendence. Few experiences make sound feel more like landscape. There is a piece of music that changes every time it is performed. Open-form scores give performers choices. They may rearrange sections, select which lines to play, or respond to cues taken from the room itself. Some works use cards with motifs that musicians draw at random, creating sequences that never repeat. Others offer graphic notation that describes energy and texture rather than exact notes, encouraging improvisation within a shared language. The composer becomes a designer of possibilities rather than a dictator of events. Audiences learn to listen for process, not for a single correct version. Technology extends this idea with generative systems that use algorithms and live inputs to weave new versions in real time. The spirit remains the same. Music can be a living conversation that honors structure while inviting chance, personality, and place to shape the final voice. The world's largest choir once had over 100,000 singers. Across a single vast stage in the Philippines on a warm evening beneath open skies, the world witnessed a moment unlike any other in musical history. A sea of voices gathered. Not a few dozen or even a few thousand, but over 100,000 people lifting sound as one. The immense choir was made up of students, teachers, volunteers, and ordinary citizens who had rehearsed tirelessly in separate locations before finally uniting in a single record-breaking performance. As the first notes rose, the air trembled with the scale of it. Every voice had its place, woven into a larger harmony that seemed to stretch past the boundaries of the arena and into the night itself. No microphone could capture it fully, and no camera could show every face at once. The event was not merely a display of musical talent, it was a demonstration of what happens when countless individual breaths aligned toward a shared purpose. Some listeners described the moment as feeling like the sound was not just heard, but physically felt, rising from the ground through the soles of their feet. Even after the last chord dissolved, the sense of unity lingered, a reminder that music can turn crowds into families, strangers into singers, and voices into something that feels larger than life itself. Some insects rub their wings together to create music for mating. Deep beneath the grass, between leaves and stems, tiny orchestras play unheard by human ears. Crickets, katydids, and grasshoppers may look small and simple, but they are masters of a technique biologists call stridulation. By rubbing specialized patches on their wings together, they create rhythms and pitches that travel through air, leaves, and even soil. To a potential mate, these songs are as important as a bird's colorful feathers or a lion's roar. Each species has its own code, a specific number of chirps per second, a certain pulse pattern, or a narrow band of frequencies that marks the call as belonging to a suitable partner. Some species sing faster in heat and slower in cold, meaning that cricket sounds can even be used to tell the temperature if one knows the right formula. Others adjust their songs depending on whether predators are near or whether another male is calling nearby in competition. To us, the sound of the summer night may be a gentle chorus, but to an insect, it is a map of rivals, opportunities, and danger. Every note matters, every pause speaks. Certain tribal songs are believed to be over 10,000 years old. In Australia, among the First Nations, people whose traditions stretch farther back than almost any culture on Earth, there are songs that trace stories not just of land and ancestors, but of geological events. Some describe coastlines that now lie under the sea, lost to rising waters after the last ice age. Others speak of stars appearing in new positions in the sky, or of mountains that once were volcanoes. Linguists and anthropologists have tracked these songs, comparing them to geological evidence and astronomical reconstructions, and found stunning correlations. The oral tradition has preserved information for hundreds of generations without written record, carried on breath and body long before papyrus or parchment ever existed. These songs are not museum pieces. They are still sung on country, still used for ceremony, identity, and education. When the songline is performed, it is both memory and map. It teaches young people who they are, where they belong, and how the world itself came to be shaped. In this way, music becomes a vessel that can cross not only land and culture, but vast oceans of time. Monkeys can tell when a song is out of tune. In experiments designed to test the musical sensitivity of non-human primates, researchers discovered that rhesus monkeys react strongly when a familiar melody is altered in pitch or timing. Even though they cannot sing or speak in rhythm like humans, their brains recognize when something in an auditory pattern does not match expectation. In controlled studies, the monkeys turned their heads more quickly or blinked with greater frequency when a note was shifted off key or when a rhythmic phrase was disrupted. This sensitivity suggests that some aspects of musical perception, including expectation and pattern recognition, evolved long before language or culture became distinctly human. The monkeys were not trained to respond. Their reactions were spontaneous, indicating the existence of deep neural mechanisms shared across primate species. Perhaps music is not something we invented from scratch, but something we inherited in a primitive form from ancient ancestors. In that case, our urge to correct a wrong note might be older than civilization itself. You can use music to change the temperature in a room. This is not magic or imagination, but a well-documented effect of acoustics and neuroscience working together. When low-frequency tones vibrate at certain volumes, they can alter the flow of air in enclosed spaces, subtly shifting the distribution of heat. Meanwhile, fast, bright melodies can make large groups of people feel warmer or colder simply by changing their perception, which in turn influences how much heat their bodies give off. In restaurants and stores, managers sometimes use warm, textured music in winter to make people feel more comfortable without raising the thermostat, or cooler, shimmering tones in summer to nudge customers into feeling cool, relaxed, and refreshed. The effect is partly physical, partly psychological. Strong rhythms increase body movement, leading to higher body temperature. Sustained quiet tones can relax muscles and slow breathing, reducing heat output. With perfect precision, sound can change not just mood, but the literal climate of a space. One opera was written to be sung by a single audience member. Unlike a traditional opera with a grand stage and rows of seats, this work was composed for one listener at a time. The setting was not a theatre, but an intimate room with soft lighting where the singer and instrumentalist performed for a single person. The concept was radical. Every performance was unique, shaped by the emotional presence, breathing rhythm, and eye contact of the audience member. The opera contained no chorus, no grand finale, no applause. Instead, the music followed a quiet arc, rising and falling with tenderness, sorrow, and fleeting joy, designed to be felt as much as heard. The composers wanted to collapse the distance between performer and listener, turning a normally public ritual into something profoundly private. For the person receiving the piece, it felt like a confession or lullaby, addressed not to a crowd, but to the heart. Music can cause the same chemical reactions in the brain as love. When the first chords of a beloved song begin, the brain floods with dopamine. Blood flow increases to regions that regulate emotion, memory, and pleasure. Scientists watching MRI scans have noted that the neural activity resembles the response triggered by romantic attraction or deep trust. Oxytocin, the hormone connected to bonding between mother and child, can also rise when people sing together or listen attentively in groups. This explains why music has been tied to ritual, celebration, and mourning across every culture. It does not just sound beautiful, it literally strengthens the bonds between us, making us feel safer, more connected, and more alive. Even when listening alone with headphones, the brain responds as if in company. We are wired not just to hear music, but to feel it as a form of companionship. Entire religions have been built around sacred music. In some traditions, music is not a tool for worship, it is worship. The Sikh practice of kirtan, for example, treats sung scripture as the direct expression of divine truth. The sound itself is holy, not merely the words. In West African Yoruba communities, drumming patterns call specific orishas or deities into presence. The rhythm is the prayer, and the dance that follows is both offering and conversation. In medieval Europe, monks believed that chanting Gregorian modes could mirror the harmony of the cosmos itself, aligning human souls with the order of heaven. In each case, music is not decoration added to a belief system. It is the structure that holds the belief, the way people learn to feel, time, morality, and belonging. This offers a clue to why music has such power. Long before temples or texts, rhythm may have been the original bridge between body and spirit. Your voice sounds different to you because of bone conduction. When you speak, the sound reaches your ears in two ways. One path is through the air, bouncing off walls and objects before it reaches your eardrum, just like any other voice. The second path is internal, carried through the bones of your skull. These internal vibrations emphasize lower frequencies, giving your own voice a richness and depth that others do not hear. That is why most people are startled when they hear a recording of themselves. The sound lacks the resonance they are used to feeling inside. Musicians, public speakers, and actors often train by listening to recordings of their voices to learn what the outside world hears. Bone conduction also explains why you can hear yourself underwater with plugged ears or during loud external noise. Your voice is not just something you project, it is something you inhabit from within. There are music pieces that can be performed by the wind. In remote deserts and high mountains, sculptors and composers have built large installations where natural currents play the role of musician. These structures might be made of long metal rods, hollow stones, rows of reeds, or glass tubes mounted at precise angles. When the wind blows at a particular speed or direction, it interacts with the design and produces tones, harmonics, and drones that shift constantly with weather. One famous example, the singing ringing tree in England, uses steel pipes cut to different lengths to create a haunting chord progression. Whenever the breeze passes through, the sound is neither fully human nor fully natural. It lies somewhere in between, a reminder that music does not always need a hand or a breath. Sometimes the world itself is a performer. A single note can create an emotion you cannot describe with words. There are moments in music when one note played in the right way seems to open a door inside the listener. It may be a high violin harmonic, trembling on the edge of silence, or a low organ pedal tone that vibrates the floor. The response is not a clear feeling like joy or sadness, but something more complex, a rush of awe, longing, recognition, or even mystery. Neuroscientists believe this comes from how the brain handles ambiguity. A single sustained note leaves space for imagination, memory, and bodily sensation to mingle. Without a melody or rhythm to define it, the note becomes a mirror reflecting whatever the listener brings. This is why some musical traditions prize drones or long tones, seeing them as spiritual tools rather than mere building blocks. A single sound can contain multitudes. There is a song that has never been fully performed because it is too dangerous. In 1665, a composer wrote a choral piece designed for 16 separate voices, each singing a completely independent line. The score was mathematically precise but nearly impossible to realize. Voices would cross unpredictably, forming dissonances so strong that some singers could lose pitch or inhale at the wrong moment. The sound performed exactly as written could induce dizziness, panic, or even fainting due to the density of overlapping frequencies. Attempts to rehearse the full version have stopped after only a few measures. Choral experts describe it as an artistic paradox, a piece meant to be imagined rather than heard, like an equation designed to describe chaos without ever resolving it. The score survives, but the song remains trapped in theory. Some instruments are played using only the power of the mind. Through advances in brain-computer interfaces, scientists have developed systems that allow paralyzed patients to generate music using nothing but neural signals. Electrodes placed on the scalp, or even inside the skull, pick up patterns associated with imagined movement or pitch. These signals are then translated into sound by a computer, letting the user compose or perform without physical action. Early versions were simple, limited to single tones or basic rhythms. But newer systems can produce chords, melodies, and even expressive dynamics. Musicians with degenerative diseases have used this technology to continue creating long after their bodies could no longer cooperate. The instruments are invisible, but the art is real. In a very literal sense, the mind becomes the instrument. Music can help the brain heal after a traumatic injury. In cases of stroke, traumatic brain injury, or neurological disease, music therapy has shown remarkable success in rebuilding lost abilities. Rhythm helps reconnect motor pathways, enabling patients to walk or move limbs in time with a beat. Melody stimulates language networks, allowing words to return when ordinary speech fails. Harmony increases mood and motivation, strengthening the drive to recover. Unlike most therapies, music activates both hemispheres of the brain simultaneously, providing a kind of neural bridge across damaged areas. Even when memory or reasoning is impaired, the ability to recognize and respond to music often remains intact. In that preserved space, healing can begin. What medicine struggles to reach with force, music reaches with resonance. The ancient Greeks believed music could move the planets. In classical Greek thought, music was not entertainment, it was the structure of the cosmos itself. Philosophers like Pythagoras taught that the motions of heavenly bodies created a kind of celestial harmony called the music of the spheres. The distances between planets, the cycles of moon and sun, even the ratio of shadows on sundials were interpreted as expressions of the same numerical relationships found in lyres and flutes. To study music was to study the universe, its order, logic, and metaphysics. This idea influenced astronomy for centuries, guiding thinkers to search for patterns and proportions in the sky. Even if no literal sound filled the void of space, the metaphor shaped science and art in ways still felt today. A composer once wrote a symphony using only the sounds of rubber toys. Instead of violins, flutes, and bassoons, the score called for ducks, squeakers, inflated balloons, and toy hammers. Each instrument was catalogued by pitch, attack, and texture, then arranged into movements that swung between absurdity and surprising beauty. The first audience laughed, then quieted, then leaned in as the familiar chaos of a toy box grew into a structured, expressive whole. The composer wanted to challenge the idea that music requires noble materials, showing that intention and organization can turn any sound into art. the experiment worked. Critics later noted that the symphony beneath its humor offered a meditation on childhood memory and the boundary between noise and meaning. Humans may have learned to sing from gorillas. While most primates use simple calls, gorillas sometimes hum while eating, producing rhythmic, low-pitched sounds that resemble early song. These hums are social signals, inviting others to share food or marking contentment. Some researchers believe that our ancestors may have developed musical communication not from language, but from similar rhythmic, tonal expressions. The gorilla's humming is not random. It has phrasing, repetition, and variation. If singing began as a way to bond groups together during shared activities like eating or resting, this behavior could be a living fossil of musical origin. The forest, not the concert hall, may have been our first stage. The first digital song was stored inside a glass bottle. In 1977, a computer scientist encoded the binary data for a short piece of music onto magnetic tape wrapped around the inside of a glass cylinder. The bottle was then sealed and placed on display as a kind of time capsule containing not just sound but the mathematical instructions for recreating it. The idea was revolutionary. Music was no longer bound to grooves, reels, or vibrating bodies. It had become pure information, waiting for any machine with the right code to bring it back. This bottle marked a turning point in the history of sound. From then on, music could travel as numbers, independent of medium, untouchable by decay. The bottle still exists, and so does the song, dormant but immortal. There is a melody that has existed in every culture for thousands of years. Ethnomusicologists studying global lullabies found that across continents, languages, and centuries, parents sing to children using nearly identical melodic intervals, a falling third, a gentle rise, and a slow descent. These patterns show up in ancient Chinese cradle songs, Celtic folk tunes, Polynesian chants, and Middle Eastern bedtime melodies. The words change, the language shifts, but the contour remains. The reason may be biological. Infants respond most calmly to these shapes, which mimic the soothing rhythm of speech between caregiver and child. Before literacy, before cities, before writing, this lullaby contour traveled the world through the breath of parents in the dark. It may be the oldest surviving human melody. Deep underground caves can turn sound into light. Inside certain crystalline caverns, strange optical effects occur when specific frequencies echo across the chamber. Thin layers of mineral vibrate in sympathy with sound, causing microscopic shifts that refract passing light into visible glimmers. Explorers have reported seeing tiny flashes like stars on damp stone when they call out or strike a tuning fork. Scientists confirm that this is real. The process is called sonoluminescence, a phenomenon in which vibration creates light through rapid compression and expansion of material. In most labs, it is observed in liquids or gas. But caves provide a natural version, rare and subtle. In those moments, sound briefly becomes sight, a reminder that the senses are not as separate as they seem. You can make music from the sound of your own blood flowing. Inside, every living human is an orchestra playing constantly, yet almost no one ever hears it. The heart contracts and relaxes in a regular cycle, sending waves of force through arteries and into tiny capillaries. These movements create vibrations that travel through muscle, skin, and bone. With the right equipment placed gently on the surface of the body, this hidden sound can be captured, amplified, and transformed into audible frequencies. The result is a slow, pulsing rhythm that reflects not only the heart rate, but emotion, stress, and even thoughts. When musicians sample this internal rhythm, they do not just record sound, they record life. Some sound artists have layered these pulses into music that combines electronic textures with the soft thud of circulating blood. Listeners describe the experience as surreal and humbling, as if the body is playing a song from the inside out. Even more astonishing is the fact that no two people's vascular rhythms sound the same. Age, breath, movement, and mood all change the pulse. A body is not just a carrier of rhythm, it is rhythm itself. This is why the idea of turning the pulse into music resonates so strongly. It is proof that every human is already an instrument, even in silence. There is a structure made entirely of ice that plays music when you touch it. In Sweden, winter temperatures drop so low that water becomes a sculptural medium, clear and hard enough to shape into massive blocks. Inside one frozen hall, musicians step onto a stage built from ice and begin to play instruments carved from the same material. The tones they produce shimmer through the cold air like crystals humming. Each ice piece is carefully selected for its acoustical character. A longer block resonates more deeply. A thin one rings like a bell. Audiences sit wrapped in thick blankets, watching breath turn to cloud in the air while the music unfolds. The ice does not behave like wood or metal. It reacts to temperature, touch, and even body heat. If a performer's hands warm the surface too much, the pitch shifts. If the room rises only a few degrees, notes slide or crack. This fragility is part of the experience. The stage is temporary, melting into water by spring. The musicians do not preserve the sound permanently, they simply offer it to the moment. The idea is both musical and philosophical. Some performances are not meant to be repeated, recorded, or owned. They are meant to be felt, then released, like seasons. Scientists have discovered that music can change how you taste food. Taste is not merely a chemical reaction between tongue and ingredient, it is an act of perception. Your senses work together, and when one is stimulated intensely, it affects the others. In controlled studies, volunteers were asked to eat the same food while listening to different types of music. The results were astonishing. When exposed to light, high-pitched melodies, subjects rated food as sweeter. When they heard low, brooding tones, they reported bitterness, even when none was present. Eating to fast-paced rhythms made food feel more exciting. Slow, ambient music made portions seem larger. These findings have changed how some restaurants think about cuisine. Chefs now pair dishes not just with wine, but with composed soundscapes designed to enhance texture or aroma. Airlines have even begun designing playlists to make in-flight meals taste better, despite low cabin humidity and reduced smell sensitivity. The science behind this is called cross-modal perception, a reminder that the mind does not treat senses as separate channels. Instead, it blends them into a single experience. Food becomes memory. Sound becomes flavor. Music is not just a background to eating, it is part of the recipe. Some songs can cause hallucinations without drugs. When music contains repeated patterns, unexpected harmonics, or vibrational frequencies that stimulate the brain in overlapping regions, listeners sometimes report spontaneous visual imagery. These visions range from shifting colors or moving shapes to false scenes that feel dreamlike yet vivid. The experience is most common when people listen with closed eyes in dim or silent environments, allowing the brain's visual cortex to activate in response to auditory stimuli. The effect is not a disorder. It is a rare but natural interaction between neural networks that normally work separately. Certain musical traditions, such as shamanic drumming or overtone singing, use these techniques intentionally. In some rituals, long vocal drones create a trance state where participants report floating, flying, or entering imagined landscapes. Modern composers have begun creating works designed to trigger similar experiences using layered tones, spatial audio, and incremental rhythm shifts. These hallucinations are not caused by chemical substances, but by the brain's ability to spin sensation into metaphor. Sound becomes image. Rhythm becomes movement in the mind. Music in these cases becomes a form of internal cinema. The Beatles once recorded a song that only dolphins could hear. During the height of their experimental studio era, the band worked with engineers who were fascinated by the upper limits of human hearing. One session included the use of an oscillator that produced frequencies beyond the reach of most people, but well within the hearing range of dolphins and some dogs. These tones were subtly layered into a short instrumental track as a playful experiment. Although the song was never widely released, it demonstrated a novel idea. Music could be made for other species, not just humans. Since then, other artists and researchers have designed soundworks that speak to animals, from bird symphonies to whale duets. Marine biologists often use music like this not for entertainment, but to study cognition and communication across species. When musicians step outside the limits of the human ear, they enter a much larger acoustic world, one shared by creatures who hear the planet in ways we can only imagine. One composer tried to rewrite the sound of the universe. A modern composer, fascinated by the structure of space, collected radio emissions from distant stars, planets, and cosmic dust clouds. These signals, normally outside the range of human hearing, were translated into audible frequencies and arranged into a vast orchestral score. The piece was not meant to be literal. It was a poetic interpretation of the universe, using sound to communicate scale, motion, and mystery. During performances, audiences sat in darkness while the music unfolded like a map of the cosmos. Listeners described the experience as humbling, even spiritual. The score gave emotional shape to things that otherwise exist only in numbers or photographs. The purpose of the project was not to prove anything scientific. It was to offer a new way of feeling the universe, not just understanding it. The composer called it a reminder that humans are listeners in a universe full of signals, most of which we have never learned to hear. You can tune a guitar to the frequency of Earth's rotation. Although Earth rotates so slowly that its natural frequency is far too low to hear, this vibration can be multiplied upward into the acoustic range by calculating overtone intervals. Musicians have taken this number and created instruments tuned to its harmonics, allowing them to play chords and melodies in resonance with the turning of the planet. The music has a grounded, steady quality, as if tied to a force beyond the pace of daily thought. Some listeners feel calmer. Others report a sense of familiarity they cannot explain. The idea is not mystical. It is based in physics using the same harmonic math that governs octaves and scales. By tuning music to a planetary rhythm, artists invite listeners to feel like part of a larger cycle, one that began long before culture and will continue long after. It is a way of aligning art with motion, vibration with existence. Music can change how fast you notice the passing of time. Your brain has an internal metronome, constantly marking intervals and comparing them to expectation. When music enters that system, the metronome is disrupted. Upbeat music accelerates internal timekeeping, making hours seem shorter. Slow, ambient music stretches the moment, creating the sensation of time unfolding gently like liquid. This effect explains why gyms blast energetic playlists, why waiting rooms play soft piano tracks, and why movie scores shift rhythm during scenes that need to feel fast or slow. Music is not just sound. It is a sculptor of experience. In laboratories, participants listening to fast, bright music consistently underestimate how long a task takes. Those listening to sparse, dreamy music overestimate duration. The phenomenon is not psychological imagination. It is a neurological truth. Time is not fixed. It is elastic. And music is one of the hands that stretches it. There is a sound so low it can make you feel haunted. Infrasound is below the human threshold of hearing, yet the body detects it through vibration. When exposed to these frequencies, people report chills, dread, or the sense of a presence nearby, even in an empty room. Haunted house stories often happen in old buildings with large resonant spaces where wind or machinery creates low vibrations. Scientists tested this by placing infrasound generators in concert halls, then asking audiences to describe how they felt during musical performances. During the low-frequency pulses, people reported unease, sadness, or an unexplained emotional shift. When the tone stopped, the feelings faded. The effect does not rely on belief. It reflects the way the nervous system responds to vibration in the lungs, gut, and skin. Infrasound bypasses the ear and travels through the body, triggering ancient instincts tied to danger or earthquakes. What feels like a ghost may be physics. Certain birds learn new songs every single year. Some songbirds rebuild their musical vocabulary from scratch with each breeding season. The marsh wren, for example, learns dozens of new song patterns annually, discarding last year's sets almost completely. This requires a brain that remains flexible well into adulthood, something rare in mammals. The new songs serve several purposes. They signal health to potential mates. They help birds establish territory against rivals. They also keep the acoustic landscape of the forest alive and changing, so predators cannot memorize alarm calls or courtship sounds. Young birds soak up these new songs by listening and imitating like students in a constantly evolving classroom. For these birds, music is not tradition. It is reinvention. Each year, the forest writes a new symphony of voices before falling silent in winter. One museum has a room designed to absorb every sound you make. An anechoic chamber is a room built to eliminate echo and reflection. Every surface is covered in foam structures that swallow vibration. When a person enters, even footsteps make no sound. Speaking feels unnatural, like words are vanishing the moment they leave the mouth. Visitors often become aware of sounds they never noticed before, like the clicking of saliva or the hiss of breath through the nose. In total silence, the nervous system becomes confused. Without reflected sound to map the environment, the brain loses its sense of space. Some people cannot stay inside longer than a few minutes without discomfort or dizziness. The room is used to test equipment like microphones and headphones, ensuring they function without environmental interference. But it is also a reminder that silence is not a neutral state. Humans evolved in a world full of echo. Remove it, and the result is not peace. It is disorientation. You can hear the echo of your own thoughts in a silent chamber. In extreme quiet, the brain begins to interpret internal electrical signals as sound. When all external noise is removed, the auditory cortex listens inward and hears activity usually overshadowed by environmental input. People described faint tones, rhythmic pulses, or even whispered fragments that seem to come from nowhere. These are not hallucinations in the pathological sense. They are the nervous system doing what it always does, but without the world's noise to mask it. Musicians sometimes visit silent chambers to reset their hearing or explore how sound arises from stillness. The experience reveals that silence is not empty. It is full of the machinery of thought and life normally hidden beneath the surface. In that chamber, the brain becomes its own instrument. Music can help your heart beat more efficiently. Cardiologists have discovered that listening to slow, steady rhythms can improve heart function in patients recovering from surgery or suffering from arrhythmia. The heart does not simply beat on its own schedule, it responds to auditory cues, syncing its tempo to an external rhythm, a process known as entrainment. When a patient listens to music with a calm pulse, blood pressure drops, oxygen flow increases, and the body relaxes. Some therapeutic programs include daily listening sessions with carefully composed soundtracks designed to match the patient's resting heart rate, then gradually guided toward healthier patterns. Even in healthy individuals, music can reduce stress hormones and reduce the workload on the cardiovascular system. The heart listens even when the mind is distracted. There are people who can remember every note they have ever heard. Individuals with perfect auditory recall can store melodies, harmonies, and even exact timbres deeply in memory without ever needing sheet music or recordings. A piece heard once can be replayed internally with precision 10 years later. This ability is linked not only to musical talent, but to unusual neural architecture in regions associated with long-term memory and auditory processing. Some people with this gift can even recall environmental sounds like the tone of a subway announcement or the specific squeak of a childhood toy. The ability is rare and often lifelong. It gives insight into how the brain can treat sound as deeply as language or image. The world becomes a library of unrecorded music, each moment preserved as if the mind were a living archive. The oldest recorded song is still recognizable today. On a clay tablet from ancient Mesopotamia, researchers found a cuneiform inscription containing musical instructions for a hymn written before the rise of Rome or Greece. Although the tablet is fragmentary, scholars use linguistic and archaeological evidence to reconstruct the melody. When played on replicas of ancient lyres, the song sounds surprisingly familiar, built on intervals still used in modern scales. The lyrics honor a goddess, and the tempo is gentle, suggesting ritual or devotion. This discovery proves that music has been structured, written, and shared for at least 3 millennia. The hymn is a message across time carried not on paper but on clay, reminding us that melody can outlast cities. Music can make you more generous without you realizing it. Studies in psychology have shown that when people listen to soft, uplifting music while performing tasks involving choice or social judgment, they are more likely to act kindly, donate money, or help a stranger. The effect arises from activation of neural circuits linked to empathy and trust. The rhythm regulates breathing and heart rate, while the harmony triggers emotional openness. Restaurants use this effect to improve tipping. Charities use it during fundraising. Care homes use it to encourage cooperation among residents. Generosity does not emerge from logic alone. It emerges from emotional readiness, and music is one of the most direct paths to creating that state. There is an ancient instrument that has no strings or holes. The lithophone is a musical instrument made of stones selected for their ability to resonate when struck. Found in Vietnam, China, and parts of Africa, some lithophones are over 3,000 years old. Each stone is shaped carefully, not for appearance, but to produce a clear pitch. Arranged in rows, the stones form a scale that can be played like a xylophone using wooden mallets. The sound is soft, warm, and bell-like, neither metal nor wood. Because stone does not rot or warp, lithophones are among the oldest playable instruments in the world. When struck today, they produce the same tones ancient musicians heard, making them a direct acoustic bridge to the past. You can use music to clean up toxic waste. Some bacteria break down pollutants like oil or chemicals, but they do so slowly. Researchers discovered that by exposing these microbes to specific low-frequency vibrations, their metabolic rate increases, helping them digest contaminants more efficiently. This technique, still experimental, has shown promise in cleaning industrial waste sites without harmful chemicals or heavy machinery. It is an elegant idea. Instead of fighting pollution through force, the environment can be healed by amplifying life itself. Music becomes not just human expression, but planetary medicine. Some people can hear music in total silence. Musical ear syndrome occurs when the brain, deprived of external sound, begins to generate internal melodies. This happens most often in elderly people or individuals with hearing loss, where the auditory system remains active but has little input to process. Instead of falling silent, the brain fills the gap with memory. The songs may be familiar hymns, childhood tunes, or imagined phrases. The phenomenon is not harmful and is not the same as psychosis. It is the brain's way of staying busy, like a projector without film. The silence becomes a canvas for sound, proving that music is not only external, it is also a function of mind. A tiny worm can respond to rhythms with dance-like movements. The roundworm, called Caenorhabditis elegans, has only a few hundred neurons, yet it can sense patterns of vibration in its surroundings. When researchers tapped the surface of a dish in repeating intervals, the worm began to sway and bend its body in time with the rhythm. It reacted differently to slow pulses than fast ones, showing that even the simplest nervous systems can detect and respond to temporal patterns. This suggests that rhythm perception did not begin with humans or birds or mammals. It may be a fundamental part of life, rooted in movement and environment, long before complex brains evolved. The first dance may have been a worm responding to a ripple. Scientists have found a mathematical formula for musical beauty. Across centuries, people have searched for what makes music sound beautiful. But it was not until recently that mathematicians and cognitive scientists uncovered something astonishing. Like symmetry in nature or patterns in art, music that feels emotionally rich and aesthetically pleasing tends to follow specific mathematical relationships between tone, rhythm, and harmonic structure. Researchers studying thousands of songs across different cultures found that certain intervals and rhythmic patterns appear far more often than others. These patterns align with ratios such as 2001, 32, and 5004, which also occur in architecture, geometry, and even biological growth. When music follows these relationships, the brain processes it more fluently and releases larger waves of dopamine, creating a sense of reward and familiarity. But the formula does not predict creativity. It allows composers and musicians to bend or break those rules and still create beauty. Many great works of music are powerful not because they follow the pattern, but because they deviate from it at the perfect moment, surprising the listener and activating emotional depth. The mathematics of music does not remove its mystery, it deepens it. It shows that beauty is not just a matter of feeling, but a resonance between mind and math, between the structure of the world and the structure of the ear. Music can make you dream more vividly. Long before sleep, researchers could monitor brain activity. People notice that certain songs linger in the mind as dreams unfold. Now, scientists have found that listening to music before bed, especially music with slow tempo, emotional tone, or strong melody, can influence the intensity and content of dreams. The effect begins in the final waking minutes, when the hippocampus stores audio information that reactivates during rapid eye movement sleep. If the music carries themes of movement, space, or emotional stories, the brain weaves these into symbolic dream images. People who listen to calming music before bed report richer sensory detail, stronger emotional awareness, and sometimes even dreams that feel like extended music videos or cinematic environments. In a clinical sleep study, participants who listened to lullabies or quiet instrumental pieces before sleeping experienced longer periods of deep sleep, higher dream recall, and fewer nightmares. The brain treats music as both sound and memory, making it a form of guided imagination. Dream therapists now use customized playlists to help people explore trauma, creativity, and subconscious fears through sound-influenced dreaming. Music is not just background, it is a bridge between waking thought and dreaming mind. Some insects use music as a defense mechanism. It is easy to think of music as a human invention, but nature got there first. Insects such as the lesser wax moth, the assassin bug, and even some species of grasshopper create rhythmic high-frequency sounds when under threat from predators like bats or birds. These sounds are not calls for help. They are sonic camouflage. The vibrations interfere with the echolocation pulses used by predators, scrambling the sound waves that usually help them track movement. In some cases, the insect vibrates its own wings or exoskeleton so rapidly that the predator hears only auditory static instead of living prey. Other species of katydid produce rhythmic chirping patterns that are not just mating calls but territorial warnings, announcing their position to others while misleading anything hunting them. The most surprising example is the hawk moth, which can vibrate a tiny internal structure that creates ultrasonic pulses strong enough to confuse a bat mid-flight. These pulses act like musical decoys, redirecting danger away long enough for the insect to escape. Insects do not hear music the way humans do, but they understand vibration as protection. Where humans create music for expression, some insects create it for survival, proving that rhythm and sound can shape life at almost every scale. There are hidden melodies inside the structure of DNA. Every living organism contains DNA, a spiraling chain of chemical bases that store biological information. Each strand is made of 4 fundamental components arranged in sequences that form instructions for growth, repair, and reproduction. When scientists began measuring the molecular frequencies of these components, they discovered that the vibration patterns align with musical intervals used in human composition. By converting each base pair into specific tones and assigning rhythm based on chemical structure, researchers created musical representations of genes from plants, animals, and even humans. The resulting melodies are haunting and complex, full of unexpected harmony and rhythmic variation. Some musicians have transformed mitochondrial DNA into choral works performed by live singers. Others have turned viral DNA into synthesizer pieces that oscillate between beauty and tension. These compositions do not prove that DNA is music. They reveal that nature is full of pattern. When turned into sound, the genome becomes a score written long before music existed. A reminder that life moves not just through chemistry or instinct, but through structure. DNA music offers a way to hear what has always been there encoded in every cell. You can create music with nothing more than your brain waves. Electroencephalography allows scientists to measure the electrical activity of the brain in real time. When these signals are translated into sound, they form slow waves, fast ripples, or complex pulses depending on emotion, thought, and concentration. Composers and neuroscientists have used this method to create music played directly by the mind with no hands or instruments involved. A person wearing a set of sensors can change pitch by focusing, generate rhythm by relaxing, or alter harmony by imagining movement. The result is not random noise, but a personal sound portrait of mental state. In therapeutic settings, patients with paralysis or degenerative disease use brainwave music to regain a sense of control and expression, producing sound even when speech or muscle movement is impossible. In concerts, musicians pair brainwave expression with live instruments, improvising alongside the electrical music of their own minds. The boundary between performer and instrument dissolves. The brain becomes both composer and conductor. The most powerful human voice ever measured could break glass at a distance. Trained opera singers can produce sound pressures far higher than ordinary speech. but one singer named Georgia Brown achieved a vocal pitch and intensity so strong that she once shattered a thin crystal glass from several feet away without amplification. Although many people have replicated this by singing into a glass at close range, breaking one from a distance requires two things working together. The voice must match the glass's resonant frequency, and the sound must reach a volume extreme enough to vibrate the material until it fractures. Human lungs and vocal folds are not normally capable of producing that much sustained power. But Brown's technique involved precise breath control, reinforced head resonance, and powerful diaphragmatic support. The event was recorded by sound engineers who measured her output above 108 decibels, louder than a jet engine heard from across a runway. Most singers will never reach that volume. The voice is a biological instrument limited by tissue and airflow. But trained well enough, it sends energy through space that can rearrange matter. The voice is not only for words, it is sound as force. There is a song that was written by an algorithm trained on human emotion. Artificial intelligence has learned to imitate language, art, and even conversation. But one of its most unusual achievements is emotional composition. Researchers fed a neural network thousands of songs classified by listeners as joyful, mournful, peaceful, or triumphant. The algorithm learned not musical rules, but emotional patterns. It did not analyze keys or chord charts. It recognized tension, release, tempo, and phrasing the way a listener does through emotional response. When instructed to write a new song expressing longing, the AI produced a melody that human musicians described as nostalgic and tender. Others played the composition live, and many audience members assumed it was written by a human composer. This does not mean the machine understands emotion. It means emotion can be mapped through pattern, not biography. There is debate about whether AI music has soul, but there is no doubt that it has form. It reveals something profound about music. Beauty and feeling may not depend on the artist, but on structure and response. Some stone circles act like giant musical instruments. Ancient stone circles, like those found in Britain, Ireland, and parts of Africa, may not have been astronomical temples alone. Researchers studying the acoustic properties of certain megaliths found that many stones ring like bells when struck, producing tones that resonate through the ground. When arranged in a circle, the stones create standing waves that affect how sound behaves inside the space. Even quiet speech becomes amplified or warped. Some stones contain quartz crystals that vibrate audibly when exposed to pressure or heat, producing faint ethereal ringing during sunrise or shifts in temperature. The placement of stones often align with acoustic hotspots, suggesting the creators understood resonance, even without written theory. These places may have been used for ritual chant, drumming, or voice projection, turning the earth itself into an instrument. The idea that ancient people built sound stages from rock shows how deeply music and ritual were connected. Sound was not entertainment. It was architecture of energy. Music might be the reason humans can walk upright. Early human ancestors developed bipedal movement long before they developed language, but rhythm may have played a role in shaping that change. Studies in anthropology show that synchronized movement, such as group walking or marching, improves cooperation and safety. Rhythm creates cohesion. Species that move in rhythm are more likely to forage and travel together. When early hominins began using tools, carrying objects, and hunting in groups, synchronized footsteps would have conserved energy and reduced risk of separation. Rhythm may have encouraged upright posture to allow the arms to swing freely while moving in time. The development of limb coordination might have begun as physical rhythm, later evolving into music when hands became percussion and voice became melody. Music and movement share brain circuitry. Every time humans walk to a beat, they reenact a pattern millions of years old, one that helped them rise from forest floor to open sky. Certain notes can make water dance into perfect shapes. When sound waves travel through a liquid, they create patterns of vibration that push droplets into repeating geometric forms. In laboratory experiments, musicians and physicists placed water on vibration plates and played specific pitches beneath it. At low volumes, the water rippled. At high volumes, it formed stable shapes such as circles, hexagons, or even star-like figures. These patterns are called cymatic forms, and they occur because the water arranges itself along nodes where vibration is weakest. When the pitch changes, the shapes dissolve and reform. Some artists create cymatic sculptures by freezing these patterns into ice, while others film the liquid in slow motion to show how sound creates structure. The effect is not magic, it is physics made visible. Sound is a sculptor forming matter into momentary artwork. When we say that music moves us, it truly does. It moves everything it touches. Entire symphonies have been written using only non-musical objects. A man dragging a chair across a stage, a typewriter being struck at regular intervals, a dancer crushing aluminum foil beneath their feet. These sounds are not traditionally musical, yet composers have built full orchestral pieces from them, using rhythm, timbre, and repetition to turn ordinary noise into organized performance. One of the earliest examples is the Italian Futurist movement, which believed machines had their own music. Later, innovators like John Cage used radios, bathtubs, scrap metal, or silence itself to challenge the definition of composition. In modern times, street artists create music using buckets, walls, pipes, or traffic signs, proving that music does not require a violin or piano. It only requires pattern and intent. The world is full of sound waiting to be arranged. Music is not limited by fabric or wood, it is limited only by imagination. You can still hear music in a completely soundproof room. Silence in the absolute sense does not truly exist for the human brain. Even when all external noise is removed, the auditory system continues to process internal sound. Blood pumps in vessels near the ear. Neurons fire in repeating rhythms. The inner ear produces faint tones called autoacoustic emissions, tiny echoes created by hair cells adjusting to sensory input. In a soundproof or anechoic chamber, people begin to hear these sounds clearly for the first time. Some report hearing soft humming, others hear pulsing in time with their heartbeat. The effect can be unsettling because the brain expects silence to be empty. Instead, silence reveals how much activity is always happening beneath awareness. Even in perfect sound absence, the brain composes its own internal score. The shape of your skull affects how you hear music. Before sound reaches the inner ear, it travels through the head, reflecting off bone, cartilage, and flesh. The size and shape of the skull determine how different frequencies are amplified or softened. This is why headphones sound different from speakers, and why some people prefer music with deeper bass or brighter treble. The skull acts like an acoustic filter, shaping the tone before the brain even interprets it. This phenomenon explains why no two listeners hear a concert the same way, even if seated side by side. Some modern sound engineers are now designing custom headphones based on 3D scans of each listener's head and ear canal, creating personalized frequency profiles that make music sound more authentic. Hearing is not just a property of the ear, it is a sculpture of bone. One instrument uses flames to create sound. The pyrophone is a 19th century invention that turns fire into music. Tubes of glass or metal are heated with flames, causing pressure waves to form inside the columns of air. When tuned to different lengths, each tube produces a tone as the heat fluctuates. The instrument is unstable and dangerous, requiring careful oxygen control to prevent explosion, but the sound is unlike anything from wood or string. It is both hollow and fiery, wavering like heat in summer air. Musicians who play the pyrophone describe it as coaxing music from breath and flame, a reminder that sound is created by the same forces that sustain life. The instrument is rare, but its existence shows that music can emerge from the most unpredictable elements. There are frequencies that can make you feel like you are floating. Low-frequency tones between 8 and 12 cycles per second are too slow to be heard clearly as pitch, yet they can interact with brain waves and induce altered states of awareness. When combined with gentle harmonics, these tones have been reported to create sensations of weightlessness, drifting, or separation from the physical body. This is not supernatural, it is resonance. The brain naturally cycles through different patterns during sleep, meditation, and focus. When external sound aligns with those rhythms, the body responds. Some sound therapists design sessions to simulate the floating sensation of sensory deprivation tanks using headphones instead of water. Listeners describe the effect as calming, expansive, or dreamlike. Sound can move the mind as powerfully as gravity moves the body. Some songs were designed to protect people from nightmares. In certain indigenous cultures, lullabies are not just meant to soothe children. They are believed to guard the spirit during sleep, keeping negative dreams or wandering forces from entering. These hymns often have repetitive melodies, minor tones, and words that reference animals, ancestors, or cosmic cycles. When sung at twilight, they serve as both comfort and shield. In modern sleep science, researchers discovered that listening to calming music before bed can reduce the frequency of nightmares in people with trauma or anxiety. The emotional tone of the music helps the brain transition into safer dream environments, lowering stress hormones and increasing positive imagery. Whether sung beside a fire or played through headphones, protective music becomes a kind of waking dream catcher, filtering what the mind encounters in the night. A frozen lake can play a concert when you skate on it. When ice is thick and temperatures are low, pressure fractures can create long, clear sheets of frozen surface that resonate like a drumhead. Skaters who glide across such lakes often hear echoing chirps, deep booms, and twinkling tones beneath their blades. These sounds are not added artificially. They are the vibration of ice layers shifting under weight. Different thicknesses and temperatures produce different notes. Some lakes form natural scales that respond musically to the movement of skates, creating a spontaneous duet between human motion and frozen water. Photographers and musicians have recorded these ice concerts in Siberia, Canada, and Scandinavia using contact microphones to capture tones that sound like singing glass or bowed crystal. The lake becomes an instrument, the blade becomes a bow, and winter becomes music. Music can help you learn a new language faster. Language and melody share many neural pathways. Both rely on rhythm, pitch, repetition, and pattern recognition. When language students are taught words through song, they retain vocabulary more quickly and recall pronunciation more accurately than students taught through speech alone. The melody acts as a mnemonic scaffold, helping the brain group sounds into meaningful clusters. In one study, adults who sang foreign phrases were able to repeat them with less accent and longer retention than those who simply spoke them. Music activates emotional memory, which is stronger and more durable than factual memory. This is why many people can remember lyrics of songs they have not heard in years. Language educators now incorporate rhythmic chanting, melodic repetition, and musical dialogue to accelerate learning, making language not just understood but embodied. Some cultures believe that music is a living spirit. In many indigenous traditions, music is not entertainment or art. It is a being, a presence, or a form of consciousness that visited humans and taught them how to sing or drum. Songs are not composed but received. They are considered alive with their own identity and purpose. If mistreated or forgotten, they disappear. If honored, they become protectors, healers, or bridges between worlds. Anthropologists studying these cultures found that music is not performed for applause, but for dialogue with the land, the ancestors, or unseen forces. Modern psychology echoes this idea when describing how music creates emotional states that feel external, like something moving through the body rather than coming from it. Whether understood spiritually or scientifically, music behaves like something with agency. It changes people. It opens doors in the mind. It does not simply exist, it participates. There is a melody hidden in the orbital dance of the planets. As planets move around the sun, they follow predictable paths that create repeating ratios of speed and distance. These ratios can be translated into musical intervals the same way vibrating strings or air columns are. When astronomers converted the orbital motion of Earth, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter into sound, they discovered that the planets form harmonic patterns that resemble chords and arpeggios. The ancient philosopher Pythagoras believed this long before science could prove it, calling it the harmony of the spheres. Today, software allows musicians to convert planetary data into playable music, creating cosmic symphonies that reflect the timing of celestial bodies. The planets are not singing, but they are moving in harmony. When those movements are translated into sound, the universe becomes a score written in gravity and time. We live inside a song too large to hear directly, but not too large to translate. And so our quiet journey through the endless world of music comes to rest. We have wandered through ancient rhythms and living instruments, through melodies hidden in the body and patterns written among the stars. Whether in the tremble of a flame, the breath of a frozen lake, or the pulse of the human heart, music continues to remind us that the world is not silent. It is always listening, always singing, always inviting us to do the same. If you enjoyed this gentle exploration into the science and mystery of sound, I invite you to like this video, subscribe to The Sleepy Scholar, or let your thoughts drift into the comments below. It helps other sleepy minds find their way here, one dreamer at a time. But for now, there is nothing more to do. Let your thoughts grow soft, let the echoes fade to stillness, and let the last quiet notes carry you towards stillness. Good night.